Building a great business. What does building a great business look like?
You know, that book, Building a Great Business by Ari Weinzweig, is one of my favorite books to give to people that are struggling in business.
You gave this to me when I told you I was interested. This is the first book you introduced me to.
Yeah. Because he's going to talk about the things that most people don't talk about. You know, you have to have product market fit. Everybody has to have that, or they're not going to be in business very long anyway. But beyond that, you know, when you're getting started, you've got so many things to worry about and so many things to learn that this is a great book to try to guide you on what you got to do. This is the bare bones. Right. You know, I've got to be able to have that product market fit. My customers need to not only enjoy my product or like it, if I'm going to grow by word of mouth, they've got to be my evangelists. They've got to be telling everybody, man, you need to go see Mr. Romero. He's got the, you know, he can help you with your podcast. He can help you with your marketing. Sure. And so that's how you build your business when you first get started, is word of mouth. So you have to be remarkable. If you're not remarkable, which means people are talking about you, there's no word of mouth. So your product has to be very exceptional. And sometimes we kind of forget that once our business starts growing. And how do you keep that remarkable product? And Ari talks a lot about employee engagement. How do we make sure that our employees are producing the product or service exactly like we would do it, or we used to do it, or we still do it? And so he's got the 12 natural laws of business, and I'd like to talk about a couple of them today.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And so you were mentioning your employees. I think he has one of his rules targets that. I believe is rule number 6. If you want great performance from your staff, you have to give them clear expectations and training tools.
Right. And this is often a complaint when I first start talking to clients. They come in to see me because things aren't going great at their business. And we want to help them get that joy back that they had when they first started and everything was new and fresh. And they know how to do everything. They're great at all these things that are working in their business. And then they hire somebody and they train them one day, and then they expect them to be just as good as I am. That would be kind of like you expecting your favorite football or basketball or baseball professional team to only have training before the season starts and never coach those players once the season starts.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't be very successful in sports. Yet we expect our businesses to operate that way.
Yeah,
if I'm going to have great employee engagement, I need to give them great training tools. I need to make sure that their processes are correct, that we're actually doing what the process requires. They've got to have the tools to do their job. And if my one piece of equipment doesn't work and we expect them to do the workaround, well, that becomes an aggravation. So it's not just giving them training before they start working. I've got to continue to coach them and train them and give them the tools.
And so let me push a little further with this. So what happens, we see people that are afraid of hiring somebody. They've never employed anybody, and so they don't have a process in place to acquire that talent. So they end up getting somebody that they know, or somebody just sent them their way, or somebody just knocked on their door. They do that 1 week training, and then 6 months down the road, they're thinking, well, why doesn't anybody want to stay with me? Why do I keep losing this talent, right? So how do you start that process? What would you say to somebody that's thinking about hiring somebody?
Right, I've got to have a hiring guide. There has to be characteristics and qualifications on this guide that I'm not just hiring warm bodies. Anybody that comes by with a pulse, I think I can I can teach them how to do this. So you have to start with the actual hiring guide, and that's part of your process. Everybody hates processes. When they were working for somebody else, they hated the processes. That's what makes the company run. So we have to have that. And we've got to follow up. I've got to call their references. I got to find out what kind of employee they are. And the third thing, I've got to share my vision of where this company's going and what we're trying to accomplish. And if I don't share that vision with my employee, they may not want to go to work for us because, our expectations are too high, or that we're doing all the little things all other companies don't do. So it's harder to work for us. But at the same time, you're getting helped and you're getting rewarded as the company grows.
And you're setting those expectations during your interview, right? Yes. Right from the start, you're letting them know, hey, this is what the job requires. So there's no surprises later on. And nobody told me that I had to work a few hours here and there, right? Like that transparency up front, it's so critical.
Right. It's if it's one of the big things I hear is my employees will say, well, it's not my job. Well, if your culture is such that we do whatever is expected, we do whatever is required in the moment to push our success forward, and then after the rush is over, after the day's over or the week, then we go back and say, how do we adjust our process so this doesn't come up all the time? And so if they're not engaged with the company and trying to help us attain that vision, they're just punching the clock and getting a check and going home.
How do you get employee buy-in, right? How do you get people to say, hey, you know what, I may have not been fully aware of the vision, but now I get it. Now you want those folks to not complain about doing the extra, because the extra has meaning into what they're doing, its usefulness, its impact, right? So, what do you think are some few simple steps that people can do to just engage with the employees and kind of get them where they need to be?
Well, one of the simplest, and I've seen Ari do this in his businesses in Michigan, is recognizing when you're doing a good job. So he has a rule in his organization. He will not leave his business without finding 3 people that are doing an exceptional job that day and thanking them and congratulating them. So he is looking for people that aren't doing their job correctly. And the management has to do that. But he's also he's finding somebody that he can thank and congratulate for not just doing a good job, doing a specific job. The way you made that well today in that crook where nobody could do it, that was exceptional, And pointing out when people are being successful gets them addicted to that, and they want to be successful. People love to be praised. And so we forget about that as owners, because when we're owners, we're also our managers, unfortunately, until the company gets big enough.
Right.
And so
it's almost counterintuitive to look at the positive. You only want to manage what's going bad, right?
Right.
And you forget that, the things that are working is because somebody's doing the work, and you do have to acknowledge it.
Right, and you got to be looking for it. So he's forcing himself to look for success and praising success. And everybody that works for you wants to hear they're doing a great job. So you got to do it when you catch them doing a great job.
Right.
And that was the way you did that this morning was incredible.
Right.
They solved the problem. They helped another employee get through some difficult thing. I volunteered. Oh man, I need to thank you for that. And little rewards.
If they're, love languages, words of affirmation, you just hit a home run. You just have somebody that's going to stay with you for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
how do you give people feedback, right? I hear it often that these new generations coming up, they're very sensitive. They don't, it's really hard to retain them because I don't fully buy that. I think every generation has its flaws, but there seems to be a little bit of a resistance when you tell somebody that they did something wrong. So how does that look like? How do you tell somebody, hey, you messed up, without being too aggressive, but also getting the point across?
And that is difficult with a new employee. And so I've got to find a way to make them feel good when they're doing a good job, because I am going to have to correct them. And, maybe they've never been in an environment where they were corrected. And so, if I don't have trust, it boils down to trust. If my employees trust me to look out for them, and if they see that I'm trusting my other employees that are doing a great job, and I support them when things are bad, they're having a bad week, they're having family illness, whatever that, when they're having issues, I've got to support them. And there's a great group of books out there about emotional intelligence. How do I recognize when my employees are having a bad day, and how can I help them get through that? We just need to get through the shift so that we can, whatever that issue is, maybe I can give you time off, maybe I can give you whatever. Can I go pick up your relative? What can I do to help you get through that? That's hard to do when you're running your business.
Sure.
But if you want great employees, long-term employees, you better be taking care of them outside of the job too. I mean, I'm not going to have to babysit them, but I do have to be emotionally aware when they're going through stress, and I've got to help them through that.
Right.
Because we all go through bad times.
Sure. And especially those new employees, you also want to give them some room for failure. You want to create a safety environment where, okay, this is how you, and be just aware that things are going to inevitably go wrong, and it takes time for them to actually, get the whole thing. And there's research also indicating that the timing of the feedback is important. So if you already know ahead of time that they're having a bad day, maybe the moment is not the right time to go in and just double down.
Right.
But it's also, again, maybe a contradiction, but the sooner you give the feedback after the mistake has been made, the less personal the feedback becomes, right? It's almost if somebody's messing something up and you don't say anything, and a month goes by, and then you're frustrated and you say, hey, Joe, come to my office. These are all the things that, and Joe's thinking, well, I wish I would have known that 3 weeks ago. Right? He must not like me, because he's not saying anything to anybody else, just but me, right? So, yeah, it is a challenge, but man, once you get it going, you could do remarkable things in your company for sure.
And also, in our businesses, we've always stressed from the hiring on, own every problem that comes your way. It's never okay to say, that's not my job. When the problem happens and you're interacting with a customer, there's a problem, it's finding out what the problem really is and then doing everything in your power to solve it. They don't need to go talk to somebody else. If you can solve it, solve it. And so giving them that ability empowers them. Now, instead of pointing fingers, well, he did it or she did that, it's owning the problem. It's not you didn't cause the problem, but you got to fix it. And so if everybody has that attitude, among each other, it's not like we're not pointing out, it's how do we solve them? And so if it doesn't start with the owner, it's definitely not going to be there for the employees.
Yes.
If you are constantly pointing out in front of everybody what the mistakes are, in the moment, I've got to be saying, let's fix that.
Correct.
Let's fix that.
Have you read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willings? Or are you familiar with Jocko?
I have not read that, but it's on my nightstand. As soon as I get to it, I'm starting it.
It's this whole thing, right? So he has a really interesting background, has a military background, but he's also an entrepreneur. And he'll say something like, at home, he knows his wife has had a rough day. He takes the trash out without being asked. He just does it. He washes dishes because he loves his wife, and he doesn't also want to hear that he doesn't have, right? So it's this thing of, it's not my job, it's not my duty, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to set the tone, and then eventually the wife will say, well, poor Jocko, he's all exhausted, I'm going to go do something else, and all of a sudden you get an emotion of doing things.
Right.
So for those who are listening, I would highly recommend following Jocko's podcast. It is remarkable. The whole thing is built around owning your mistakes and figuring out how to overcome those issues. There's another law that I think is really important. I believe it's number 3. It says, without good finance, you fail. It is a very broad statement, but it's so true, right? I remember when I first launched, I had no idea how to calculate or come up with the lifetime value of a customer, or my cost of acquisitions, right? Customer acquisition costs, right? When you start, you kind of go through the list of things that your expenses, right? Mm-hmm. But then the unpredictable happens, right? The thing that you never looked at all of a sudden becomes a huge thing. It takes over how you run your business, right? What were people could get started? Sort of, this is a ghost that haunts everyone, right?
Absolutely, and it seems endless when you first start. It's, people throw all these financial terms at you, you don't know, and so, it's financial intelligence. How much do you know about how money flows through your business and what success looks like? And I remember as a young restaurant owner, I had managed somebody else's restaurant, and we looked at a profit and loss all the time. And that was what was important, because that was, the cost that I could control, those variable costs. That's how I got measured, is controlling those variable costs. I had no control of the rent or the utilities or the insurance, but I managed the controllables. So when I started my first business, that's all I knew about, was managing those controllables. And so that was called a profit and loss, and everybody talked about it. Everybody talked about the bottom line. I didn't know anything about accounting. So our restaurant was successful, and I wanted to buy another one. And I went to the bank, and the banker asked me for my balance sheet. I'd never even heard that term, Right. And so I was like, I didn't bring it with me today, but can I come back next week? And so then I went and found out what a balance sheet was. And it opened my eyes to a whole different world, Things were happening behind the scenes that I didn't know about. I need to know that. So when I'm getting started in business or helping someone get started, I can't tell you everything there is to know about finance. I've got to get you working on what's important now. So what's important now is going to continue to grow. That list is going to continue to grow. But if you're learning and growing, it'll become second nature to you, just like that P&L was. That, like you said, your controllables, your acquisition cost.
What would you think would be some key numbers that people need to learn how to manage and look every now and then? What are a handful of things that you think are critical? And of course, these will vary depending on the level of maturity of the company. If it's a startup, maybe they may be different than a company that has some traction. But what are those 2-3 things that you think are critical?
Well, we've talked about it. When you're a startup, you got to control your costs and actually be profitable. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to start learning what a business model is. What does that mean? People throw that term around. And so if I've got my model and you have one whether you realize it or not. You set your prices, you had your number of employees, you've got a model, even though you may not formalize that idea. And so I'm running my business model, and construction or manufacturing customers or companies that come to see us, you know, one of the complaints is they'll say, man, we're so busy, we got the phone ringing off the hook, we're selling everything we can do, and we don't have any money. We don't have any money in our checking account. And so nobody's helped them understand what their cash flow cycle is how long is it from the time we get our inventory, produce our product, sell it to a customer, and if customers got terms, how long does it take? And the faster I grow, the broker I get. And you know, I'm doing more business than ever, I've got less cash than ever. Well, once we can explain that to you, it is normal. If you're growing a manufacturing business, the faster you grow, the broker you are.
Right.
And once you understand your cash flow model, then that allows you to talk to lenders or partners or whoever it's going to take to step in with that capital that you need to keep that business growing.
Right. I'm sure, I know you have experienced this before with your clients as well, that you know, they start getting some traction, they start actually making good money, and so it's so tempting, right, to say, well, instead of buying that $40,000 machine that I need, I really want that big old truck, right? I'm going to use it for the business.
Right.
That's why I need it, right? You start justifying the reasons why you need this other luxury around you. How do we break that cycle from people? I mean, it is. I acknowledge that it's a really challenging thing to deal with, but is there something there?
Yeah, it's that when you are starting your business, you know, you are living on the minimum amount of money because you're trying to keep all the money in your business because of the cash flow cycle. And so you have that pent-up demand. Your wife wants a new Suburban, you know, you want a, you know, dually, and so what makes it worse, at the end of the year when you go get your taxes done, your CPA will say, well, you know, you got to pay $30,000 this year. Go buy your wife a Suburban and we'll depreciate it in the first year and you won't have to. And so then they go buy the Suburban. The $30,000, you know, that they saved in taxes cost them $100,000, and now you don't have any money in your checking account. And so understanding that, you know, I may have $100,000 in my checking account, but most of that's not my money. Most of that money is the cash flow cycle's money. That money's required to run your business. Yeah. And saving that little bit of money in taxes is not worth the stress you're going to go through from rewarding yourself with that luxury, whatever it is, in the short term. So that is a struggle. Yeah. You know, we need to reward ourselves in smaller ways is how I try to encourage my entrepreneurs that are in our program. Right. Because buying that $100,000 vehicle, yeah, it was great on tax day, but right. But you got to know.
Picture that you posted on Facebook only lasts, you know, that emotion only lasts a couple of weeks, you know,
and
fades
if
away.
It's on a 5-year note, you know, then now you're paying that for 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
When you could have just paid your taxes and kept that money in your cash flow cycle.
Right. Let me try to tie in all this together. You know, I've known you for a while, and I remember at one point, you know, you gave me a little bit of a tour of your restaurant, Wildwood, and in the door of your small office, you had your P&L statement, and that was shocking to see. But then you went ahead and told me, hey, everybody that works for me looks at this sheet. That's another level of transparency. So talk to me a little bit about why you do that and what's been the outcome of that transparency, of that dynamic.
And so the people that are making decisions for us, you know, we own it, we have a manager and we have shift leaders, and they have responsibilities of scheduling, maintaining the food costs, making sure we're using the right amount of ingredients on each item we sell. And so if I just told them, look, y'all need to hit these metrics, our labor costs got to be 30%, our food costs have got to be 30%, or whatever those metrics are. They've never had a business class, they've never had an accounting class, and so if I don't train them as to what does that even mean, and if I just wait till the end of the month and blow up because the labor cost is high or the food cost is high, nobody can help. But if I can show them we have to do this level of sales to have this number of employees, and if I give them a scheduling tool that helps them, but also I've got to show them the results of their work. And so they can look on that wall, and when we're hitting our metrics, we circle those in black.
Wow.
And when we're not hitting our metrics, we circle those in red.
Right.
Because you got to know when it's running. Black means we're making our numbers. Red means we've got to make some alterations.
Right.
And it's the restaurant business. The sales vary, but we go by averages, and we do 4-week rolling averages. And it's providing. I know Ari's got it in there, is providing your employees with tools so they can do a good job.
Right. Yeah.
And I had worked for people before that would just scream and holler because the food cost was wrong or the labor cost, but they never told us what to do to fix it.
Correct. Right. Right.
And so, having your employees understand what success is, and also their reward system is based on that. Not only bonus at the end of the month. I don't have to tell them when they're going to get a bonus. They can look and see. They know when they're getting a bonus. And then little rewards. It's not all money. We feed lunch. When we have an exceptional thing, we'll get lunch for everybody, or we bring the ice cream truck by when we've had a good week, or something.
That goes pretty well. I'm assuming. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so. We've been going to your restaurant for a long time, and one of the things that stands out is you retain people. I mean, people recognize my face when I get there. They already kind of know what I'm going to order. Do you think that success is due to that transparency and that mindset of, training people, constantly training and people and giving them the tools, as you said, that they need to succeed?
I hope. That's we've always been able to maintain long-term employees, and it's showing them what success looks like, and helping them, and then paying them a living wage. And so if they once they finally understand and believe that you're going to reward them when they reward you. They reward me when we make our metrics and there's profit. Right. And then, so I need to reward them. And so, and it's everything. I need to take care of them when they're having issues, and getting that culture where they take care of each other too. It's not just, I don't just come to work to punch the clock. I come to work because it's a good place to work. Right. It's not fun every day. It's hard. There's days where there's a line at the door for hours and it's hard. And, so, it's treating people like they're part of the team and they mean something to you and they're somebody, goes a long ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gary, somebody out there is looking at this conversation and they're wondering, okay, he's in the restaurant field, but what else does he do? And can you talk a little bit about your work with Louisiana Central? How do people find you? And what should their main takeaway would be?
Yeah, so I run the Business Acceleration System. It's a program that's funded by the Rapides Foundation. They actually started this concept of working with entrepreneurs to help grow our economy by growing the small businesses. I had just sold a couple of restaurants and I didn't know what I was going to do next, and somebody there, Keith Rabelais, who was the first person they hired to do this. He was a great entrepreneur here in Central Louisiana, and he was a customer of mine, I was a customer of his, and when he saw I had sold some businesses, he said, "Won't you come help me do this?" And so it was quite a challenge, and we've learned a lot through the years. But what we do is we help with business skills, and we break them into 4 concepts or 4 areas. So we talk about financial management, marketing, HR, and operations. So when people come into us and into our organization, we establish where they are in those areas, and then we help them grow those areas so that they can grow their profitability and there is no cookie cutter. We treat everybody as an individual. Everybody shows up with different levels of skill in those 4 areas. And they may be just fantastic at their financial management. Maybe in their future or their former job, they worked in financial management. Or maybe they were an HR director, somebody at some place. And so, they're really great at those skills, but you got to have all of those. I need to have a vision of where I'm going to go, and we call that, we put that in with financial management, and then I've got to have a strategy to get there, and then in order to get there, I've got to either get my customers to buy more things, or I got to go get new customers, or a combination of both. So we need to market. Marketing is figuring out who's going to buy your product, who's most likely to buy it. And then advertising is how do we reach them where they are, where you're not beating them to death with a commercial, but they're going, if they're foodies, I know where they're going to be at. That's where I can place my ads.
Right.
If I'm building carts for the nursery industry, I need to be having my ads in trade magazines. So I've got to figure out who's buying and where do I find
who
them.
you don't want buying, and learning how to let go of some customers or clients that are actually costing you more because you've done the financials and you understand that Pareto principle, right? That this portion of people are consuming this big amount of money, right? And you need to be able to understand how that dynamic works.
Right, and there are a lot of companies that get rid of their bottom 5%. There's the bottom 5% of their customers in revenues are probably taking as much time as the top 5%.
Absolutely.
And so it's okay to fire customers. The bigger you get, you have to. Absolutely. You can't deal with them.
And you have to price right too.
Yes.
Also, right?
Yes.
A lot of folks want to compete with a lower price, but when they end up getting is low quality customers. I know it sounds horrible, but in my experience in my field, I realized that if I value what I have to offer, I need to price it right, and that ultimately again helped me find the people that I really wanted to work with, not just some random person that was say, "Hey, I need your services." But carry on. So so you all help with marketing. Right.
Right, and creating value for your customers. I would much rather compete on who's got the most value for their customer than who's got the lowest price. There's always somebody with a lower price. If I decided to go into retail, I would not compete with Walmart.
Right.
They're the biggest retailer in the world. They're going to have the lowest prices. That is their business model.
It's design, it's by design,
There's nobody that I don't think there's anybody in the world that when they think, man, let's go to Walmart because the customer service is going to be incredible.
Right.
That's never occurred to anybody that's been once.
Right.
And so why would I want to compete with that? I want people to say, man, they've got the greatest value, and they love something about your product. It's not based on price.
Right.
And, you know, I need to be reasonable, but more importantly, I need to give them more than they expect. And so it's, pricing is a hard thing, and I've got to know, you know, what it costs to produce that product, but also how long it takes. If I can, you know, there's a lot of things that go into it, and it's, and so all the other skills that you're developing as an entrepreneur help you out with your pricing, because I need to know everything about my business to price it correctly.
For sure, for sure. Right. Gary, it's been fun. I appreciate your time. Let's do this again.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So again, if somebody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Well, I work at Louisiana Central, and you can reach out to me here. You can call my cell phone. And
we'll put it in the description.
Yeah,
I'll put
it
your
in
phone
the
there.
description. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.